Welcome back. It's Mets Daily, and I'm your host, Jake Brown, at Jake Brown Radio on all social media. This show courtesy of Fan Arch, of course. It's Thursday, January 9th, 2025. Happy Thursday, everyone. Let's get right into the nitty-gritty. Now, the latest rumor, report, whatever you want to call it at this point, clickbait really is what it is Andy Martino saying that batting champion Luis Arraez fits better the Mets than he does the Yankees, but also adds that there have been no substantial talks for a trade with the infielder. Now, let's just go based on the fact of who the player is and if the Mets were interested at this point. And to me, Luis Arraez is a lot more intriguing than I think a lot of people are giving him credit for. A lot of people want to call this guy, a singles hitter. He doesn't do much else. He's not great defensively, and they're not wrong. He's not great defensively. But to just call a three-time All-Star in 3 straight years, a three-time batting champion in 3 straight years, which no one else has ever done, and he's done it, for 3 different teams, is remarkable. And I think we got to look here at Luis Arraez as a player and what he could add to the Mets if the Mets were to try and make a deal for him. And look at the numbers. Again, 3 straight batting champion, 3-time NL All-Star. A couple of intriguing things here on this graphic to me. One, that strikeout percentage, 4.3%, lowest in Major League Baseball. What that means is he puts the ball in play. And the number below that means he puts the ball in play hard. And the nerds of today, the analytic people, the stat people, they love this. 26.5%. That line drive percentage led all of Major League Baseball. So he doesn't strike out. He hits the ball hard. He obviously hits a lot. He's a guaranteed 300 hitter every year, essentially, except for 2, where it was 299 and 294. Last year, 314, career 323, career OBP of 372. And then that last one is intriguing for the Mets. He played 345 games in his career at second and 146 at first. And I get it. He's not a Gold Glover, but neither is Pete Alonso. Neither is Jeff McNeil. Neither is Mark Vientos. Mets have one Gold Glover in the infield, and that's Francisco Lindor. So, you're not downgrading considerably much if you were to get Luis Arraez. And, he has the ability. Like, if you do play him at second and try and trade Jeff McNeil, you can do that. If you do not end up signing Pete Alonso, which we'll talk about next, you could play him at first. He's played enough games there where you would feel more comfortable putting Luis Arraez at first base, in my opinion, than putting Mark Vientos over there, who's never played first in his life. So it is an intriguing thought to me that I think people shouldn't push off the ledge. And you also got to consider this. Can you get a package from the Padres, who are having all sorts of ownership drama, who clearly are open to making moves, and Arraez is a rental. Remember that. He will be a free agent after the year. Could you get Dylan Cease in a deal? Could you go out there and get both Dylan Cease and Luis Arraez in a trade, and what would it cost? Now, financially, maybe you add McNeil in that deal and you give them prospects. Maybe it's McNeil, Jet Williams, Brett Beatty, and another prospect. Maybe that's what it takes. But I don't think this deal should be pushed off. And I know Yankee fans are saying, no, we don't want him. And everyone's saying, but he doesn't hit home runs. I don't think the home runs is that big of a deal here. The Mets are going to get 25 to 30 plus out of Lindor. They're going to get 35 to 40 plus out of Juan Soto. They might get 30 from Vientos. They might get 20 from Nimmo. They might get 20 from Alvarez. They may get 20 from Siri and whoever else in this lineup. So I think the power will come in this lineup. I don't necessarily think when everyone says the Mets have to add a bat and they have to be able to hit home runs, I don't necessarily agree. I think that's an added bonus. But if you can get a guy that could just flat out hit like Luis Arraez and play him at multiple different positions, that's intriguing to me. And then if you throw the name Dylan Cease in there and you're telling me you get a frontline starter like Dylan Cease, now you're talking. Now, who knows if you could get both of them, but I'm spitballing here and throwing it out there. And to me, I think the Mets have to consider it. Now, they only consider this based on what happens with our second topic of the day, and that's Pete Alonso, who, according to John Heyman, from my old employer, of course, wants 6 years. And he wants a 6-year deal, and obviously the Mets are far off, and it seems like a lot of teams are far off from this. Pete Alonso's got to step into reality, and Scott Boras more so, I guess, has to step into reality. But in the end, I think Pete Alonso has to say. I mean, he could say, hey, do this or I'm firing you, Scott. Scott Boras is high and mighty, but Pete Alonso, in the end, has the say of where he wants to go, and I think he's got to step into reality. He's not getting 6 years, not from the Mets, not from anyone. So he could keep waiting as long as he wants, but, it's going to go into March, and it's going to be the same thing as it is now. You're going to have to take a shorter-term deal. The Mets are not desperate to bring back Alonso here, and they're not going to give him 6 years. They're not going to give him, incentive-laden deals, get it to 6, back in 6. David Stearns clearly has zero interest in getting 6 years for Pete Alonso. So that's the issue, is the length. We're not, the AAV doesn't seem to be an issue. The Mets will give him $28, $30 million if it's a shorter-term deal, and I don't blame him. Why would you give him 6 years? So at some point, these two heads got to meet. Reports are it's a coin flip whether Alonso is with the Mets on opening day or not. But, the Mets need a pivot at some point. They got to address their offense. They need help offensively. They need a bat. So if they make a trade for a rise, maybe that pushes Alonso to want to sign more and come back to the Mets. But he's in a position where his career might not look the same if it's not a Mets uniform, both in terms of endorsements, how people view him as a player, how people view his career. It can change if he goes to another uniform, and his performance could change in another uniform. But if you're a Mets fan, as much as you keep tweeting and begging, today's a great day to sign Pete Alonso, him and Boris have to, have a meeting of the minds and say, hey, Scotty, we're not getting 6 years. What can we do here? Can we get 4 with an opt-out after 1 or 2? Can we meet in the middle and have the team be able to opt out if they don't want me for the long term, and I go back in a free agency and I could go out and hopefully have a better year than I did last year, which was the worst of his career. So he's got to have confidence in himself that he could do better than last year. And if he doesn't, well, this thing's going to go into March, and at some point he's going to have to agree maybe to a 1-year deal. So the longer he waits, the worse it's going to be for him. So I hope something happens soon, because I'm sick and tired, honestly, of talking about it. It's getting annoying. Arbitration moves are being announced today, as Thursday, January 9th, and the Mets have a couple guys under arbitration. One of them has been announced, and that is Jose Siri, the Mets center fielder, who you expect as of now. We'll see. They're reportedly interested in, bringing in some help in the outfield. As of now, he's probably the Mets starting center fielder. So, the Mets traded Orrs, a reliever, to get him, and hoping that he can be the guy in center field. And Jose Siri is, he's an intriguing player. He's 29 years old. He'll be 30 in July. He's a guy that clearly has a pop, clearly can be a spark, as you see in these offseason highlights of him running the bases and the exuberance he shows and kind of the speed he has, which is what excites me along with his defense. But, a guy who hasn't played a ton that still can get better. And I think a lot of us look at his average last year and say, he hit 187, his OBP's 255. This guy kind of stinks, but maybe he gets better. He's only played 4 years in the big league so far with the Astros and with the Rays. And, last year was finally the biggest sample size. He had 448 plate appearances, 130 games. Prior to that, it was 104, 101. So he finally played a ton of games, and, yeah, his average kind of stunk. But he does bring something to the table, and that speed that this Mets lineup desperately needs. Now, he only stole 14 bags. He had 75 hits. But, man, if he gets on, every time he gets on, he could steal you a base. You're in good hands. And this is a guy who hit, 18 last year, hit 25 homers the year before. If the Mets do lose out on Pete Alonso, here's some power in Jose Siri. If they can get 25 homers out of this guy and Gold Glove defense in center field, and you have Lindor and Siri up the middle in terms of Gold Glove defenders, that's huge for this team. That's huge for the defense. That's huge for the pitching staff. And I think station to station, getting the bottom of the order, getting some stolen bases from a Siri, leading into someone like Lindor who could steal you 30, that's something the Mets badly need in this modern game. I talk about how they need more speed. Well, Siri can provide that. So he agrees today to a deal, avoids arbitration, and, I think that he is an X factor for this Mets lineup. $2.4 million to avoid the arbitration for Jose Siri. So hip, hip, Jose. I'm Jake Brown, at Jake Brown Radio. Make sure you smash that thumbs up below, subscribe, share this with your Mets fan friends. We'll be back again tomorrow on a happy Friday with another edition of Mets Daily. We'll see you then.